Okay, so let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Alexandra, and I'm a talent marketing specialist at Intellius. Today, we are going to talk about BrainStorm project with Derek Adams, Chief Technology Officer at BrainStorm, and Volodymyr Melnychuk, .NET Engineering Lead at Intellius. And before we start, let me remind you about our great upcoming event this Saturday, the 3rd of July. It's .NET Hackathon Brainstorm in Action. Perhaps some of you are already a participant of this hackathon. So for you, it's a great opportunity to get acquainted with Brainstorm project and its product. Can we switch the slide, please? And thanks. And for all the rest, if you are a .NET engineer and you are interested in building innovative e-learning solutions, I invite you to check the details and join in our Saturday Brainstorm Hackathon via this QR code. Also, I'll duplicate the link to our Zoom chat. And of course, you can always find all the information regarding our upcoming events on our Facebook page. And one more brief organizational remark. Please keep your microphones muted during the presenters' speeches. You can write your questions to the chat, and after each of 2 parts, the speaker will answer them. That's it. Let's move to the core part of this meeting. Please welcome our first speaker, Derek Adams, Chief Technology Officer at BrainStorm. Derek, glad to see you, and the stage is yours now.
Well, thank you so much. It's absolutely a pleasure to be joining you today and share a little bit about BrainStorm and also, our relationship with Intellius and what that looks like and why it's been such a great partnership. So thank you for putting this together and thanks for your time tonight. So let me just go through and share a little bit about the story and who we are to give you a little bit of context. And then I'll go into a little bit about our working relationship with Intellius and why we think that the group we work with might be the best group in the world. Certainly honored to be presenting with Volodymyr. He's one of the great engineers on our team, has been there for a long time, and he's about as good as they get. So no better stage to share than with Volodymyr. So by way of introduction, I'm Derek. I'm CTO at BrainStorm. We've been doing business with Intellius for about 12 years, I believe now. And we try and have a little more fun. I started university studying music and percussion. And so, all of our corporate headshots tend to have a little bit more fun, a little more personality. We try. But anyway, it's been a great journey and a long time coming. So let me tell you what we do. And that is, let's start with a simple question. What problem does every SaaS company face? And the short answer to that is adoption. And what's happened is it's significantly pivoted or changed over the past 6-7 years as SaaS has become commonplace, because before companies would sell software and a software company would sell their software, and then nobody has metrics. Nobody knows the utilization rates. Nobody knows the adoption rates. And now what's happening with software is every metric is captured. Every metric is visible. And so there's all sorts of pressure on software companies to drive this adoption. And it doesn't matter which software company you are, if it's the biggest of the big, from a Microsoft and a Google all the way down to very, very small vendors, there's a ton of pressure. And you're starting to see a shift in the marketplace, such as Slack, who now Slack only charges for consumption. And that's a very bold move. They're one of the first ones to do this in the marketplace. And so as you think about that is just lost revenue if they can't drive adoption and usage of the software. So that's the problem in a very simplistic way of what we're trying to solve. Now, why is it such a difficult problem to solve? There's several reasons, but let me primarily focus briefly on how the industry thinks about it and why we think it's wrong. So it actually goes back to when we started factories and manufacturing lines, okay? And what happened was, as the Industrial Revolution came about, and sorry, I know history is boring. I won't spend much time here, but anyway, when this came about, what we found is in industry and factories, they didn't have the skills necessary to do that. And that actually drove an educational revolution in our schools. And what happened was our education systems, and this is, I can't speak absolutely across the entire country or across the entire world, but I know we've looked at a lot of areas in the world, and it mimics this. The education system started mimicking factory production. And if you think about that, it's kind of true. You go in and you say, oh, okay, I'm in this factory line. I'm going to, we'll say the common one here. I'm going to be a programmer, a developer, right? Okay, here's your course. We're going to go down through, and you come out and you look like every other piece coming off the factory line. The challenge with that is it doesn't really impact a corporation significantly, a company significantly, when they're looking to drive individual productivity, because every role is different and the needs are so diverse. And so what's happened is, once people are in their careers, they become a little too smart about efficiency. So they simply say, I'm going to stop learning. And they tend to use the tools and work in the way that they did when they came out of school. And they don't want to adopt anything else. And you think about tech people are different, right? We're always craving the latest and greatest technology. If you're a non-tech person, doesn't matter if you're marketing or accounting or sales or whatever, you're kind of like, I'm too busy to deal with it. So you're unmotivated to learn. And this unmotivated learner represents 96% of a workforce. So the challenge then is, how do we take this 96% and motivate them to learn? And there's a few key things that we always look at. Number one is, it's got to be relevant. They have to understand the why. And number two is, it's got to be timely. It has to be when it matters to them most. So we've got a different way of thinking about this. If you think about most education you go through, you'll go through a class, and at the end you take an exam, and you pass the exam, and you get a certificate or a graduation plaque or diploma or something that says, congratulations. And what does it mean? It means that you were able to recite back whatever information you learned. Did it change your behavior? Did it change the way you function? Did it change the way that you work? And the answer most of the time is no, because we cram the information, we simply regurgitate it, we get this, and then we go back to our old habits. So a different way of thinking, let's just talk about this quickly in an abstract sense. If I was to watch the way that you work and can see and understand your behavior, and in that behavior, I can now inform or customize your learning to what would be most beneficial for you to change or you to learn. So I try and teach you that through various methods, right? This is just high abstract still. And now what I do is I watch your behavior to see if it changed. Did it change? I don't know. It's interesting. Okay, if it did change, great. That means we're making progress and we move to the next thing that's most relevant. If it didn't change, maybe I should look at a different modality or reinforce something differently, but for some reason it's not connecting with you. And this cycle of looping in behavior and learning, as opposed to something like just a certificate or, whatever, that is a critical loop, we believe, and nobody thinks that way in the market. Nobody thinks that way in the space. And we're not looking to change the academic world, but I also believe that this is the problem with the academic world, right? It's like everything just becomes academic, theoretical, and not applicable. So this is kind of always at the forefront of our mind, is let's look at behavior. And we do that by tapping into data graphs of vendors. So for example, big one that we have live is Microsoft's data graph. So I can see how you use software, how you're utilizing it. Are you communicating, using the various tools, and what features in those tools are you using? We take all that information, inform the learning happens, and we monitor behavior. So hopefully that makes sense, that it's a different paradigm and a different way of thinking. And hopefully your mind's churning already of where we can go with this. And we're not there yet on the project. We're super excited where you can start to introduce machine learning and other things there to automatically inform this and drive this forward. Okay, so thus to date, over the past 12 years or so, we have worked primarily with Microsoft, and it's been a fantastic relationship. It's been great, and we've worked with some amazing companies. And I just pulled a few here. You see all those brands right in the middle. That's a conglomerate called VF Corp. I take a lot of grief because I'm always wearing Vans clothing. I'm just trying to be loyal to one of our greatest customers, VF Corp. All of these companies are amazing. They all face the same situation, just like every software company faces it. Every enterprise or every corporate customer faces the same thing with adoption. And by focusing on Microsoft, an interesting things happened for us. All of our marketing, all of our lead gen over the last 10 years has come through Microsoft. And the reason being is they've done all these studies. They did these without our knowledge, which was fantastic, because as soon as we heard they were doing it, we got a little panicked to find out the results. But we were more successful by 2.5 times of driving adoption. Think about it, 2.5 times more effective at driving adoption of their solutions than any of their in-house solutions and any other partner. And so because we think about it differently, we've refined our approach, if you want to say our recipe, right? How we approach it and think about it. Now, what that's done is that's allowed us to become very, very efficient and effective. And it doesn't mean we can't get better, but we're far outpacing others just because of our approach. Microsoft, like I mentioned over our partnership with them, they actually bring us into deals. So as soon as they go in, they will sell Microsoft 365 and they'll say, by the way, you need BrainStorm. And they have made all the introductions, and all of our lead gen has come from Microsoft because they recognize what an unbelievable job we do there. Okay. Well, so the thought there is that's great. And that's where we've been. We're pivoting and we're changing. And it's not because we're turning our backs on Microsoft in any way. We believe we've built a very successful business doing that. But we believe that we have developed a methodology and approach in what we've done with Microsoft that we can actually replicate now with other software vendors and broaden that out. Okay. So just to help paint that picture, what's the business opportunity? And if you think about the average customer, the average user, the number of software applications per user. And in general, I would say a lot of those come from the big vendors, right? But you think about it, and it's 30 applications per user on average. Okay. If you look at an organization, it's over 1,000 applications. So you take an enterprise organization, you look at their software stack they run. Sometimes it's endorsed by IT. A lot of times it's shadow IT. That's the shadow IT we refer to as areas within an organization that adopt software without the consent or the support of the IT groups, right? But that's a big footprint, right? And in working in Microsoft, we cover probably 10 to 15 applications on average per user. And so here's this big footprint of opportunity that we think we can go and capture and start aggregating and stacking, if you will, these solutions. Okay. And so where are we headed? And so this is all kind of business level. And right after this, I'll turn to what it means from a tech standpoint. But right now, by September, we will be offering everything that you see here that's bolded, right? Or in color, rather. So you think about productivity suite. Well, basically everyone either runs Microsoft or Google. There's a handful out there that runs Zoho, but it's a very small minority, right? We will be playing in both of those spaces. And that covers basically every company in the world. One's one of those two. You think about collaboration software. Everybody runs either Teams, Cisco WebEx, Zoom, or Slack. And we'll be playing in all four of those. Think about project management. We started with Smartsheet. We'll, obviously with developers, Jira becomes a little more interesting and Asana, but we started with Smartsheet and we'll be expanding in dealing with some of these others in project management. Think about workflow automation. Think about file hosting. These are the top 5 categories we've looked at where we're branching into initially. We've identified 23 different categories of where we believe we want to go. Now, here's the exciting thing. A lot of these are the vendors' coming to us saying we need help. It's not us going out to them. So there's a couple of these and terms aren't finalized, so I won't single them out, but they've approached us and they're saying, please help us. Not only do we want you to help us, but we will push you through our channel, meaning we will include you with our product as you go to market. Now, what's exciting about that is, let's say that you start with a Microsoft suite, and then suddenly you're going to add on DocuSign because there's a group there. And then we can add on Zoom or we can add on Slack, and we start stacking these. And these are just additional channels for revenue. And we believe that as we grow this, because we've worked with some amazing companies and we've got a few million users on our platform, we believe this can scale very quickly and start addressing a greater market and a greater need. Okay, so what does this mean to the tech side, right? All of you have experience in developing, and over time we start with a nice, I don't know if you're familiar with this game called Jenga. Starts off with a nice solid block, and you have to slowly pull out a piece and restack it. And over time, it becomes a little precarious, right? The back-end framework we have on our platform is over 10 years old. And our Jenga tower is getting a little tippy. And so we made the decision about a year ago for two reasons. One is just the amount of tech debt, but also with the business opportunities we have and trying to refocus those, that we would start with an absolutely clean slate and build the platform without any regards to taking the business lessons learned and the new business opportunities, but not being constrained by the existing platform at all, and build it the way that we believe it should be built that can propel us through this scaling motion, right? Not only that, if you think about the last 10 years, tech stacks have changed dramatically in the role of the cloud and everything that's happened, right? It's been significant in the changes. And so we want to take advantage of that. We want to leverage that. Certainly as developers, I don't know that there's ever been so much excitement on the team as when we announced that we were going to start clean and they could instantly ignore all that painful tech debt and start developing. That was a pretty exciting time. So we are in the midst of this. Now, yes, it's waterfall in nature to the initial release, but when you look at what we're doing, it's certainly phasing. And so it'll be very iterative and still very agile in how we approach it as it comes to market. And then we continue on evolving the platform. So let me conclude with this talking briefly about why Intellius, right? Here we are, BrainStorm, based in the US. We use Intellius. We've used them exclusively for our development efforts for all these years. The team is growing. It's an exciting time. But why do we work with Intellius? And let me focus on three quick things. First off is the people. When we were looking for a group to work with, we didn't come and say, here's our 100-page described specific requirements. Now go do these tasks. Okay. We're looking for people that we actually are members of the team. We do not view, Volodymyr or Andre on this call, or Vasil, I'm seeing some names pop that are members of the team. Like, none of those people we don't view them as, they're members of Intellius. We actually view them as they're members of BrainStorm. And that means when we're planning, when we're thinking, when we're talking about architecture, when we're talking about business problems, when we're working through that, we want you involved. We want your mind engaged. We need your thoughts. We need your input. The product is evolving with you and because of you, not in spite of you, if that makes sense. And so that collaboration completely changes the dynamic of how we interact and how we view the team members at Intellius. And they're great. The people are great. We love it. And it's just, I would say huge amount of respect goes both ways. Well, maybe more respect goes towards Intellius than back. No, I don't know. But no, a huge amount of respect goes both ways and works so well in it. So we love the people. Number two is the talent. So, our board of directors comes to me on, this is a topic that comes up every year. And it's, should we build our own in-house team? Should we look at other groups? Should we go elsewhere? Just in terms of, not that they're unhappy with Intellius, but just asking the questions. And every time I defend and say, no, we get amazing talent from Intellius and from the Ukraine. And to the extent that I have said repeatedly, if I try and build a team here, it will not be more talented than the group we have coming from Intellius. So the group of people that we have, Intellius has done a remarkable job of recruiting excellent people. The team members are super talented. The quality we get, the rate, the velocity, everything is unbelievable. It's super good, and we're just so pleased. So the talent level is incredible. And the last one I would mention is just culture. So when you think about culture, BrainStorm is really big on culture, and culture is more than just, pizza parties and foosball games and, whatever. Like it's how you prioritize things and what you think is truly important. And the reason our relationship with Intellius has worked as well as it has is, at the end of the day, I think we align on culture, and I'll make some statements, and maybe it's true for Intellius, maybe it's not, but this is my perception of Intellius. Things with Intellius, they put people above dollars. They put taking care of doing what's right above simply, cutthroat business. And when you look through, there's several examples I could cite, but one of them that I'll just share briefly is we approached the ownership there at Intellius a couple of years ago and said, we really feel like women on our team are underrepresented from tech opportunities, and what can we do about this? And how cool was it that Intellius immediately went and put together a program to help facilitating basically educational classes to accelerate some learning and giving opportunities. And we were putting an emphasis on recruiting of giving some spaces, more spaces on our team for female developers, right? And now the numbers have increased significantly. I think that's just one example of the many examples of where it's doing the right thing and supporting the people and putting the people in front of everything else. And so Intellius, I've got a world of respect for Intellius and what they've done, who they are. And the other thing I would just make mention of is that culture from Intellius. They've maintained that even though they've been so successful and are growing so rapidly. And the people there seem to love it, and they seem to be supportive of Intellius. And so to me, from my perspective, that translates to they're doing things right there. So hopefully that gives you some overall perspective. Love the people, love the project. We're passionate about what we do, and that's BrainStorm. So I think my time is up as well. Any questions that I can answer for anyone? Okay. Well, with that, I will end and turn the time, I think, well, whoever's next. I think it's Volodymyr, but I'll stop sharing and turn the time back over.
Okay, finally, I found the unmute button.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'd like to say thanks to Derek for this great presentation, these impressive statistics and ambitious plans, and special thanks for your kind feedback on cooperation with Intellius, for sharing the same values and approach to culture. We are really happy to be a part of this great story. So if our participants don't have questions for Derek, I guess we can move forward. Now get ready to welcome our next speaker, Volodymyr Melnychuk, .NET Engineering Lead at Intellius. Volodymyr, our virtual microphone is yours.
Okay, thanks, Derek, for the great presentation. Okay, and so I hope you can see my screen. Okay, so you see the word Abyss here in the title of the presentation, actually Abyss, but we call this thing Abyss. It was named just because of the nature of the service with the graph database that should handle a lot of relationships between everything that we have in the system. And it's pretty huge. That's why it's called Abyss. So today we'll talk briefly about the Azure resources that we use on our new platform. I will say a few words about the boundaries of our services and how we split them. And obviously, I will finish the presentation with a few words about the graph database and how to write some queries, structure, and so on. Because our hackathon actually is based on this graph database to mimic the behavior that we actually have there. So that's why it will be here. Okay, so my name is Volodymyr, and I'm currently working here on Intellius with the BrainStorm for 3 years. Actually joined it on 28th of June, 3 years ago, so kind of anniversary. You can find me on the links on the slide on Stack Overflow. Sometimes I give some answers there. Also, I don't contribute quite often on the GitHub at the moment, but you actually can find some repositories there with some kind of plugins for Elasticsearch that I made in my youth years. Yeah. Okay, let's go to our Azure resources. You can find here a lot of icons. I don't know what they mean actually here, because like you can easily misuse load balancer and application gateway icons. So on our new platform, we use Kubernetes to spin up the containers. Actually, we have microservice architecture obviously there, and it actually handles the load pretty well. And previously we used Service Fabric to run the containers, but we faced some kind of issues there with the scalability. It was not possible to run multiple pods or containers on a single node. So we actually bypassed this with switching to the Kubernetes. And now we're only limited with the performance of our databases to scale. So something like that. Also, we have extensive use of the Azure functions, and majority of our services use the SQL databases, with a few exceptions actually. Also, we have obviously Azure CDNs and storage accounts to host our frontend, and I didn't find any icon for React, so it is not here, but we actually host our frontend on React. So I will talk briefly about the CQRS, which we actually, this paradigm is lays in the basement of all our services, just because we expect that the load of the state mutations and reads will be significantly different. So here you can see the classical structure of the CQRS. You have the comments that will change the state. Also, you have queries that will read the data from the database, and if some comment mutates the state, some event will fire and actually will change the read database. But with this approach, you can easily scale the read database to handle bigger load on the read side. The same thing with the write side for this approach. So in our situation, we changed this approach slightly. Actually, for comment handlers, comments we use only the messaging system. Like in our case, it's service bus. Obviously, you have to place some kind of buffer, like shielding your service from the spike load. And obviously you will handle and even the load across your instances with messaging system pretty well, because you, for example, have 5 or 10 workers behind this service bus messaging system, and they will be processed sequentially. But with the API, for example, using gRPC or HTTP with different case, you are actually making that kind of request in parallel, and you can actually run into some kind of deadlocks, and it doesn't scale pretty well. But obviously for the read side, we use the HTTP, plain HTTP. At the moment, we reading and writing to the same database, but this will change in future. we will probably consider moving to Cosmos DB for the right side, but it's actually just an idea. We'll have to perform the load test or something like that. But basically, for the read side, we will use the SQL Server because of the nature of the data, and it's much easier to tune the performance there, add indexes, and so on. And also, you can see this subscription message on the right side. So in our case, we have some notion like materialized views. So to bring some data on the front end, we may not have this kind of information in our service. For what I mean, consider that you have to bring on the front end list of the users which are currently added to some kind of video or I don't know, or some other consumable asset by the end users to view, or I don't know, assessment or something like that. On the people service, you have only groups and users and links between them, as you can see on the slide. And other thing on the content side, you have only flows and flow items and some text or something like that. So to display this kind of information, you have to store this data maybe somewhere else on the other service, or you actually can send this data to the people service, because on the materialized view, you can actually store everything you want, because it's not the part of your domain. You use your only domain and domain model only on command side to mutate the state. And in our case, this data is only for the read side, as you can see here. So here with this kind of subscriptions, we, for example, people service has subscription on the some other service. When user is added to a video or something like that, we also update this kind of record on the people service. And with that approach, you are actually able to display users, filter them, sort them, and so on, with an easy way. Also, with this kind of situation, you have to think, you have two totally independent services like people and content. And then actually you have the requirement how to actually store the links between those services. It's actually a horrible idea to mix this information and put everything to, for example, people service or the content service. And obviously you have to store this data in some third service. With that in mind, we actually considered some storage options. Obviously, SQL Server is fast and so on, but I can't even imagine how the query to read the content tree, for example, for some users will look like. Common table expressions, a lot of exists statements, and I can't even imagine how this will look like on the entity framework. Obviously, you can create a view or something like that to query the data, but eventually you will kill your SQL Server with that kind of performance, with deadlocks and so on. That's why we considered using the Cosmos DB. It scales pretty well with this kind of read units and has an auto scale options. But it, in classic manner of the Cosmos DB, it's kind of pain in the guts to store the links between the edges and so on. That's why we picked up the graph database there. All the kind of data that you have in your databases can be easily represented by the graph. All these joins are just, and linking tables are just like an edge between the two vertices, and vertex is just a kind of a row in your table. So here on this slide, you can actually see some kind of sample graph database. Here you can see that we have a user here. We have the user that belongs to a group, some kind of videos, and some kind of containers that store this video. And as you can see, these containers can be nested. So in this case, just to read this user from the database, you just have to type this kind of query that you can see here. So to read the nodes that actually are adjusted to this user, for example, assign it to this user, you just have to place the out keyword, and you will navigate away to all other vertices that have some common edge between them. As you can see, this query will return the container 1 and video 1. Okay, yeah, SQL Server and so on. The SQL will easily get the data, just a single join and so on. Actually, 2 joins, because you probably will have to separate tables for the container and for the video. But let's imagine the situation that you have to read, for example, video that is assigned directly to the user without any kind of container. So with SQL Server, you will have to create some kind of common table expressions, exist statements. It will just look horrible. And actually, this query on the Gremlin also look horrible, but it's kind of brief. And as you can see, here we're just navigating away from the user. Then with this as statement, we actually stored the reference to the container and to video. And then just we're querying out, filtering out all the vertices that we actually had navigated previously for. So with this not statement, we're actually checking that input vertices are not that vertices that we stored previously in this variable with this direct ref. So we will go from user to container 1 and video 1, store the references there. Also, we will go to the video 4, but then we will check the input edges for those containers for the video 1, container 1 and video 4. And then we will compare how we actually get there. So in this situation, with the video 1, we see that we have a back reference to the container 1, and we will filter out this vertex from here. And this has label is just a filter to query out the videos and so on. So Gremlin query language allows us to write a lot of more powerful queries, like with the loops and so on, with I don't know, with some kind of infinite loops and so on. For example, you can nest these containers like you want without any issues and so on. So something like that probably we'll have to create on the hackathon. That was pretty much it. I'm not sure if I covered something that you were interested in, so I'm waiting for the questions.
Hey, Volodymyr, let me jump in really quickly. Sorry. Just the business context for that problem, if you think about it, is not only do we, as we add all these additional vendors into the platform, we have to control access to different content from that level. But if you think about it, even within an organization, we need to segment that content. So certain users have access to certain learning assets and other ones do not. You know, a very simple example might be if you've got a mergers and acquisitions group in your finance team, right? That they might have very specific and maybe even sensitive information that they don't want the rest of the organization to have. You might be a multinational corporation and you have people located in Europe somewhere versus in Asia versus in the US, and you might want specific content to be exposed to those different users, right? And so there's a lot of different relationships. It's not like you come in the platform and you get access to everything. And some of those are based on payment that they're purchasing it, and other ones are just rights and limitations. And so when you think about that, and then groups, you briefly mentioned groups and members of groups and how they have access to everything, all those different views and rights and access, that's the complexity of the problem that we're trying to solve with the graph database. So just maybe a little more context for that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Volodymyr and Derek. I can't see any questions. Please, participants, if you're hearing us, write your questions.
Actually, that was trivial, right? And obvious.
Sorry, the connection was bad. Can you repeat, please?
Mentioned that apparently it was obvious for why we choose this and how it works. I don't know, maybe it's worth to add a little bit context for guys who joined us today. Yeah, why we mentioned about this. I see that we shared the link to the hackathon. Yeah, which will happen this week.
Yes. Yeah, this Saturday.
Yeah, and this the task gonna be very related to what Volodymyr shared. You can use it to maybe figure out the solution, maybe try something we tried, maybe figure out something better.
And
Yes.
let me add one more comment on that. Not the hackathon, but this is a great example of how BrainStorm works with Intellius. You know, we came with the business problem, and then in working with product managers and the tech teams, that whole solution and approach and thinking that came from Volodymyr and his group. Of here's the problem, you know, okay, the world is yours. Any tech solution you want to solve, what do you think? How should we solve this? And they go through and they test and play with a bunch of different things and do some research, and they come back and they say, well, we think this is probably the right approach. And, you know, obviously there's some checks and balances and review it, but all of that thought and thinking is coming from Volodymyr, and the graphic he showed with all the different icons from the, you know, the Azure stack that we use and the tech stack we use, you know, the vast majority of that technology is coming from the development team members. And so I think it's just a great point to highlight what I was talking about and how we work and how we rely on more than just your lines of code. You know, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for people that are much more vested in being proactive and thinking about problem solving and being creative and pushing, you know, better solutions in our tech stack. So anyway, just the last comment there.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Okay, thanks a lot to our great speakers, Derek, Volodymyr. Your presentations were super, and thanks for making this event happen at all. Okay, and thanks a lot to our guests who joined us. Hope this information were useful. I mean, especially for our participants, yeah, of this .NET Hackathon on Saturday. And I remind you that this event will be held on the 3rd of July. So if you are a .NET engineer and you are interested in participation, please apply. If you are not into this event, but you are interested in this great BrainStorm project, please visit our website, and there are a lot of open vacancies. We are hiring, so you can join our great team. And thanks again. If you don't have any questions or comments, I'd like to wish you a nice evening, and for Derek, have a nice day.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.